Most people walk through life believing their memory is broken. They think forgetting names, lessons, or simple tasks means something is wrong with their brain. But the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. The mind you were given is not weak, damaged, or slow. It is simply untrained. Memory is not a gift reserved for geniuses. It is a system, and systems can be learned, practiced, and mastered. When you forget what you just read or heard, it is not because your brain failed you. It is because no one ever showed you how your brain actually works. The human mind is constantly receiving information. Sounds, words, faces, ideas, emotions, images, and noise flooded every second of the day. If the brain tried to keep everything, it would collapse under its own weight. So it makes choices. It keeps what feels important and throws away what feels useless. The problem is that most people never tell their brain what truly matters. Information enters, but it is never processed, connected, or stored. It simply passes through like water through open hands. Think of the mind as a vast library. Every new piece of information is like a book arriving at the door. If the book is thrown onto the floor without a label, without a shelf, without any care, it will be lost among thousands of others. But if it is placed properly, named clearly, and revisited, it becomes easy to find forever. Forgetting happens not because the book never arrived, but because it was never stored correctly. This is why people forget names moments after hearing them. A name is heard once without focus, without repetition, without emotion. The brain marks it as unimportant and deletes it. But the moment attention is added, everything changes. When a name is repeated, visualized, or connected to something familiar, the brain builds a strong pathway. That pathway becomes a road instead of a fragile thread, and roads last. Attention is the gateway to memory. Without it, nothing enters deeply. A distracted mind is not an open mind. It is a closed door. When attention is divided, memory cannot form. This is why people study for hours and remember nothing. Their body is present, but their mind is somewhere else. Reading while scrolling, listening while texting, watching while thinking about something else. Information is heard, but never truly seen. The brain remembers what it notices clearly. Even a few seconds of real focus can turn a moment into a lifelong memory. When something matters, the mind must be told to pause, to look, to listen, to repeat. That short pause is often the difference between remembering forever and forgetting instantly. But attention alone is not enough. The mind does not store information as words. It stores experiences, images, feelings, movement. When words remain abstract, they slip away. When they are turned into pictures, they stick. The brain thinks visually. It always has. That is why faces are remembered more easily than names, and stories last longer than facts. When information becomes an image, it becomes alive. A strange image, a funny picture, or an exaggerated scene leaves a deep mark. The mind loves what feels different. What surprises it, what makes it react. A plain word is weak. A moving image is powerful. This is why imagination is not childish. It is essential. The strongest memories are never flat. They have color, sound, and emotion. They move, they connect. They create a small movie inside the mind, and movies are remembered far longer than lists. Lists are cold and disconnected. Stories are warm and linked. One moment leads to another, and the brain follows naturally. This is how the mind has always learned. Long before books and exams, humans passed knowledge through stories. Not because it was entertaining, but because it worked. Stories organize information in a way the brain understands. Each part has meaning because it belongs to something larger. When facts are woven into a narrative, they stop being fragile. Repetition then deepens what attention and imagery begin. But repetition alone is not enough either. Timing matters. Revisiting information at the right moments tells the brain that it is valuable. When something is seen again after a short break, the brain strengthens the connection. When it is seen again after a longer break, the connection becomes permanent. This is how short memories turn into long ones. Emotion is the final lock that seals memory in place. The mind does not treat all information equally. It protects what is tied to feeling. Pain, joy, fear, pride, sadness, and hope all act as signals. They tell the brain to save this. Neutral information fades quickly. Emotional information stays. This is why people remember moments that changed them but forget hundreds of ordinary days. Feeling gives memory weight. Even imagined emotion works. The brain does not care whether the feeling is real or created. It only cares that it exists. And when knowledge is shared, it becomes even stronger. Teaching forces clarity. It requires recall, organization, and expression. When something can be explained in one's own words, It becomes part of the mind itself. Teaching is not the end of learning. It is proof that learning has happened. When the brain starts learning how to store information, the next big enemy appears: mental overload. Most people think their memory is weak, but the real problem is that their mind is too crowded. A crowded mind has no space to keep important things. Just like a room full of junk cannot hold something valuable, a noisy brain cannot remember what truly matters. Every day the mind absorbs a huge amount of useless information. Notifications, short videos, random news, opinions, and endless scrolling fill the brain with noise. This noise pushes important memories to the back. Then when you try to remember something important, your mind feels tired and blank. Memory does not fail because it is broken. It fails because it is overloaded. Silence is a powerful friend of memory. When the brain gets quiet moments, it starts organizing itself. Thoughts become clearer. Ideas connect. In silence, memory gets stronger. When the mind is always busy reacting, it has no time to store information properly. That is why deep thinking happens in quiet moments, not in constant noise. Writing is one of the strongest ways to save memory. When something stays only in your head, it is light and unstable. When you write it down, it becomes solid. Writing slows your thinking and forces your brain to organize ideas. This process creates strong memory paths. That is why written words stay longer than spoken or read words. Testing yourself wakes up your memory. Looking at answers again and again makes you feel confident. But real memory is built when you try to remember without looking. When your brain searches for information, it becomes stronger. Even if you struggle, that struggle is good. It is a sign that memory is being built. Sleep protects memory. What you think about before sleep tells your brain what is important. At night, the brain cleans and organizes everything you learned during the day. Reviewing important things before sleep helps the brain move them into long-term memory. This small habit can make a big difference. Places help memory stay organized. The brain remembers locations very well. When information is connected to places, it becomes easier to recall. Visualizing familiar rooms and placing ideas inside them gives the brain structure. Structured memory is stronger memory. The most important rule of memory is protection. Do not allow everything into your mind. Choose carefully what deserves your attention. When you protect your focus, your memory improves naturally. A calm mind remembers better than a busy one. Memory is not built in one day. It is built through daily choices. What you watch, what you listen to, what you repeat, what you write. When these choices are made with care, the mind becomes powerful instead of tired. The journey is still going. When people start using these ideas, something interesting happens. They stop forcing their brain and start working with it. Memory begins to feel natural instead of stressful. The mind is no longer fighting to hold information. It is gently guiding it to the right place. This shift alone changes how learning feels. One powerful habit that strengthens memory is turning learning into action. Information that stays unused slowly fades away. But information that is used becomes part of daily life. When you use a new word in a sentence, explain an idea to someone, or apply a lesson in real life, your brain marks it as important. It understands that this knowledge is not just noise. It has purpose. Teaching is one of the fastest ways to lock memory in place. You do not need a classroom or students. You can teach by speaking out loud to yourself, explaining an idea to a friend, or even pretending to teach an invisible audience. When you teach, your brain must recall, organize, and simplify information. This process strengthens memory deeply. What you can teach, you rarely forget. Another secret of strong memory is connection. The brain remembers better when new information is linked to something already known. When you connect a new idea to an old experience, a familiar place, or a personal feeling, memory becomes stronger. Isolated facts are weak. Connected facts are powerful. Every connection creates another path back to the memory. Emotion also plays a quiet but strong role. The brain remembers what makes you feel something. It does not matter if the feeling is big or small. Even curiosity or mild interest helps. When learning feels boring, the brain lets go. When learning feels meaningful, the brain holds on. This is why personal examples and real-life meaning make learning easier. Repetition with space is another key. Repeating something again and again in one sitting feels productive, but it is not very effective. The brain needs time between repetitions. When you come back to information after a gap, the brain works harder to recall it. That effort strengthens memory. Short reviews over many days are far better than long study sessions in one day. The body also supports memory. A tired body creates a tired mind. Lack of sleep, poor food, and constant stress weaken focus and recall. When the body is cared for, the brain works better. Even simple habits like drinking enough water, walking daily, and sleeping well can improve memory more than people expect. Confidence matters too. When people believe they are bad at remembering, they stop trying properly. They rush, doubt themselves, and give up early. But memory grows with trust. When you believe your brain can improve, you give it time and patience. This positive attitude removes pressure and allows learning to settle. Over time, these small habits create a powerful change. Memory stops feeling random. It becomes reliable. You start trusting your mind again. You stop saying, "I forgot," and start saying, "I remember." Not because you became smarter overnight, but because you learned how memory really works. The process is simple, but it requires consistency. Small daily actions build strong memory. There is no shortcut, but there is a clear path. And once you walk it, learning becomes easier, faster, and more enjoyable. The journey continues. As this journey continues, the mind begins to change in a quiet but powerful way. You start noticing that remembering is no longer an effort. It becomes a natural response. This happens because the brain loves structure. When information is organized, it feels safe. And what feels safe stays longer. One of the strongest tools for building structure in memory is using places. The human brain is extremely good at remembering locations. Even after many years, people can remember rooms, streets, and houses from childhood. This natural skill can be used to store information. When ideas are placed inside familiar locations in the mind, they become easier to find later. Imagine walking through a place you know very well. Each corner, each room, each small detail is clear. Now imagine placing one idea in each space. When you want to remember, you simply walk through that place again in your mind. This gives memory order. Instead of searching randomly, the brain follows a clear path. This method works because it turns information into a journey. The brain remembers journeys better than isolated facts. Movement creates memory. When you mentally move from one place to another, each idea is triggered naturally. This is why speeches, lists, and lessons become easier to recall when they are linked to places. Another important habit is reviewing at the right time. Reviewing something once is not enough, but reviewing it too often without space is also weak. The best time to review is just before forgetting begins. When the brain struggles a little to remember, the memory becomes stronger. This gentle struggle tells the brain that the information matters. Nighttime is especially powerful for memory. Before sleep, the brain prepares to store information. When you review important ideas at this time, you guide the brain toward what should be kept. Even a few minutes of review before sleeping can improve memory deeply. This is one of the simplest habits with the biggest results. Writing also becomes more meaningful at this stage. Writing is not just copying words, it is thinking on paper. When you write in your own words, you process information at a deeper level. The brain slows down, connects ideas, and builds understanding. Understanding is the strongest form of memory. Memory also grows when pressure is removed. Stress blocks recall. Fear of forgetting creates more forgetting. A relaxed mind remembers better. When learning feels safe, the brain opens up. That is why calm study is more effective than panic learning. With time, memory becomes more stable. You stop relying on last-minute effort. Instead, you build a system that works quietly in the background. Learning no longer feels heavy. It feels light and controlled. This change does not come from talent. It comes from respect for the mind. When you give your brain clear structure, enough rest and gentle repetition, it responds with strength and clarity. The path is still unfolding. At this stage, something important starts to happen inside the mind. You begin to feel more in control. Learning no longer feels rushed or chaotic. Instead, it feels calm and intentional. This is because memory grows best when the brain feels guided, not forced. One powerful habit that strengthens memory deeply is reviewing what you learned before sleep. At night, the brain becomes a silent worker. It sorts information, removes what is useless, and stores what feels important. When you review key ideas before sleeping, you send a clear signal to your brain. You tell it, "This matters, keep this safe." Even a few minutes of quiet review can turn short-term learning into long-term memory. Another strong habit is active recall. This means trying to remember without looking. Many people keep reading the same page again and again and feel confident. But confidence without recall is an illusion. Real memory is tested when the information is not in front of you. When you close the book and ask yourself what you remember, your brain starts working harder. That effort builds strength. Struggling to remember is not a failure. It is a sign that memory is growing. Every time your brain pulls information out on its own, the memory path becomes stronger. This is why testing yourself is more effective than rereading. The brain remembers what it works for. Writing continues to play an important role here. Writing after recall, not before, is especially powerful. First, try to remember. Then write what you recall. This process shows your brain what you know and what needs improvement. Over time, this creates clear and stable memory. Another key to strong memory is emotion. The brain stores what carries feeling. When learning is connected to a personal experience, a goal or a value, it stays longer. Even simple emotions like curiosity or excitement help. When something feels meaningful, the brain treats it with care. Many people forget because they rush. They move too fast from one topic to another. Memory needs time to breathe. Slowing down creates space for understanding. When you allow yourself to learn slowly, memory becomes deeper and more reliable. The environment also matters. A clean, quiet space supports a clear mind. When the space around you is chaotic, the mind often follows. Simple order creates mental clarity. This clarity makes remembering easier. Over time, these habits create trust. You start trusting your mind again. You stop fearing forgetting. And when fear disappears, memory improves naturally. Confidence and memory grow together. This journey is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming consistent. Small daily habits shape a strong mind, and a strong mind remembers what truly matters. The journey moves forward. As the process continues, the mind begins to feel lighter. This happens because you are no longer trying to remember everything. You are choosing what matters. Choice is one of the most powerful tools for memory. When everything feels important, nothing truly is. But when you decide what deserves your attention, memory becomes sharp. One of the biggest enemies of memory is constant distraction. The brain cannot store deeply when it keeps jumping from one thing to another. Every time attention breaks, memory weakens. When focus stays on one task, even for a short time, the brain creates stronger connections. Single focus builds strong memory. Multitasking breaks it. Silence becomes more valuable now. Silence is not empty. It gives the brain time to process, connect, and settle information. Even a few minutes of quiet thinking can improve memory more than hours of noisy learning. In silence, the brain organizes itself naturally. Another important habit is clearing the mind regularly. Thoughts that are not written down keep spinning in the head. This mental noise steals energy from memory. Writing thoughts, plans, and worries on paper frees space in the mind. A clear mind remembers better than a crowded one. Repeating information with meaning is also essential. Repetition without understanding is weak, but repetition with clarity builds strong memory. When you repeat something, try to explain it in your own words. This tells the brain that the information is truly understood, not just memorized. The brain also loves rhythm and routine. Studying at the same time each day, reviewing in a familiar order, and using simple routines help memory settle. Routine removes decision stress. When the brain knows what to expect, it can focus fully on remembering. Letting go of pressure is another hidden strength. When people panic about forgetting, they block their own memory. Calm confidence opens the mind. Trusting the process allows memory to grow naturally. The brain performs best when it feels safe. Gradually, memory stops feeling like a problem to fix. It becomes a skill you manage. You know when to focus, when to review, when to rest, and when to let go. This balance is what creates long-lasting memory. By now, you are no longer just collecting information. You are building a system that supports learning, protects focus, and strengthens recall. This system works quietly day by day without stress. The mind is preparing for the final stage. Everything begins to come together. The mind no longer feels confused or overwhelmed. It feels organized, calm, and ready. This is what happens when memory is treated as a skill instead of a mystery. You stop hoping to remember and start knowing that you will. By now you understand that strong memory is not built by force. It is built by care. Attention gives memory a door. Images give it shape. Emotion gives it weight. Repetition gives it strength. Rest gives it protection. When these work together, memory becomes stable and trustworthy. One of the most important lessons is this: the brain remembers what you respect. When you respect your focus, your time, and your mental energy, your brain responds with clarity. When you protect your mind from useless noise, you create space for what truly matters. Memory needs space to grow. Learning then becomes part of your life, not something separate. New words, ideas, and lessons stop feeling heavy. They connect naturally with what you already know. You start noticing that you recall things without effort. Names return easily. Ideas feel clear. Confidence replaces doubt. Consistency becomes your quiet power. You no longer search for motivation. Small daily actions carry you forward. A few minutes of writing, a short review before sleep, a moment of silence, one clear focus at a time. These simple habits shape a strong mind. Mistakes no longer scare you. Forgetting no longer feels like failure. It becomes feedback. When something fades, you know how to bring it back. You understand the system. And once you understand the system, you are in control. The greatest change is trust. You trust your mind again. You stop fighting it. You work with it. This trust creates freedom. Learning becomes enjoyable. Memory becomes reliable. And growth becomes natural. This journey was never just about remembering facts. It was about building a mind that supports you. A mind that holds what matters and releases what does not. A mind that grows stronger with time instead of weaker. If you live these ideas, not just read them, your memory will continue to improve every day. Not because you are special, but because you are consistent. And consistency is more powerful than talent. The mind you have is enough. It always was. You just needed to learn how to use it. The journey is complete.